Okay, we're back. Saved. Starberry, hello. Sorry you joined during the downtime. Yeah, first stream of the day. Ready to get going here. Um 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 yes, so what I was saying, this these two here are the trash pile. They were the oldest and like the first workers that I had in the colony. And they just reached the end of their regular lifespan. So um I'll clean these out, probably when we're done with the stream here. Get it nice and spiffed up for them. But if we go back to the cricket, there's a couple of workers that have pulled it under the test tube, and they're gonna start dismantling. You can see that they've already like started taking that back that bottom leg off. So that's one of the meatiest parts on the cricket. So that's probably going to be one of the first things that they actually take off and take down uh, into the colony. So that's what they're currently eating. And then over on the other side of the little arena here, I have a test tube that is full of sugar water. So that is where they get their sugars from. Their proteins then come from the insect sources like the crickets here. All right. Um, we got a couple things to go through today, but I wanted to start with the ants because I know those are a fan favorite. Um, First thing, shout out Momtomology. We got a package in the mail the other day, and it is some surprisingly late birthday presents. Um, given that Momtomology was there when I was born, you would think she would know the birthday. Um, but it turns out that the one thing that I specifically asked for was on back order. So it took a while to get here, but it is it was worth the wait. This is the one that was a problem. This is the one that caused the delay. Freaking Snoopy 75th anniversary watch with a little Woodstock there. So this one was sold out for a while. That's why it took like another 2 months, but we finally got it. This is very sick. Uh, I think I specifically said I would like it to introduce some whimsy to my regular wardrobe. So sick Snoopy watch, Momtomology, awesome. Another thing that Momtomology was very hit with, we got a sign. We're finally like a streamer that has a sign in the background. Nice little damselfly cutout. She suggested this for like the starting soon screen. She's like, well, so you don't have to have your little sticky note anymore. Um, and it is quite nice, but I don't have a good way of making this the starting soon screen. Um, so we're gonna put this up on the wall for now, and then figure out what it is. But I did also tell her that you guys liked the sticky note. It gives it a nice rustic charm to the stream. But yeah, sick streamer sign. I'm like really moving up into the big leagues. Bug chats with Evan. Hell yeah. So yeah, starting this not um Purgatory, hello. Rewatching the clip of the stream. Which one? Oh, maybe the one about the sticky note, like the first one, where we were talking about that. Oh. I see. I see. Well, it was live for a little bit. um. Okay, so the next thing that we need to work on today, we have to locate some specimens. Elder So On, hello. Ooh, WWE Raw, excellent. Danny, hello. Um, I've mentioned this a couple times on stream and even on regular chats. I am going to the National Entomological Society meeting on Friday. Um, so I fly in on Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday is the Entomological Collections Network meeting. Um, and so that's like a 1.5 day conference that is all of the collections nerds, people that manage collections, and the talks cover everything from like cool specimen spotlights of highlighting things that you have or that you found recently in your collection, all the way to a couple years ago we had like a 2-hour symposium on what is the best glue for insect specimens. So a lot of the nitty gritty, really kind of nerdy and very niche stuff around collections management. And I've been going to this conference since I was an undergrad, so it's been a long time now. But especially with my new job, where the whole job is collections management, this is going to be a really important conference for me going forward. Kind of staying up on the innovations and the challenges and all of the stuff that kind of comes with managing a collection. And then after that, starting Sunday afternoon and going until Wednesday, is the Entomological Society of America meeting, or we just call it ESA. And that one is a lot bigger. My first ever conference was the ESA in 2016 in Orlando, and there were about 9,000 entomologists there for that. That one was cheating a little bit because it was also the co-hosted International Congress of Entomology. So it wasn't just regular ESA, but that was kind of combined, and it about doubled what the normal attendance is. ESA regularly is about 4,000 to 5,000 entomologists, so still a really huge, like a really big conference. If you even knew there were that many bug nerds out there, and the conference ranges everything from more museum talks and things like that to specimen based research, so descriptions of new species, surveys of certain areas and reporting your findings, to like pest control stuff, people doing new pest control chemical assays on termites or bed bugs or any of that sort of thing. So it kind of runs the whole gamut of entomology, and it's really fun. It's like my favorite time of year because all of my friends from like my entire last 10 years of my life usually show up. Folks that I interacted with for the first time in undergrad who are off having their own very successful careers, finishing up grad school, former mentors or people that have helped me with projects in the past. So it is just a big ol' happy family gathering of the nerds. And this year, I have been given permission now to leak a little bit. There will be some very special guests this year at ESA. Special guests that you guys might know. Definitely no. Yes, it is a leak. They it hasn't been mentioned on stream before, and I double checked before I started streaming that this would be okay. Shruti and Lucas are going, which is going to be super fun. I got to hang out with them pretty briefly when I was in Austin, but we now have a full week of hanging out, going to bug stuff together, and I even took a few days off after the meeting to hang out with them some more and like actually have free time to do stuff. So that's very exciting. I'm super stoked that they're going. Super stoked that I'll get to see them. Um, and they said they'd be streaming tonight too, so you guys can go and talk about your exclusive leak. But I did check with them before to make sure they weren't like keeping it a secret or anything. Um, yeah, so you'll get a report when we get back for sure about how that goes. I know they've been to other conferences before, like animal behavior and things like that. At least Shruti has. Um, but I'm very interested to see how how they handle that much bug information all at once. I know it's going to be overwhelming for them, but I also know that they're both super stoked on it, um, and are very excited to see what comes out of it. So yes, exclusive leak: Shruti, Lucas, Evan, hanging out next week. Um, but all of that is to say, we have a little bit of conference prep to do. I'm not going to make you sit through my conference talk, primarily because I haven't started it yet. We're gonna have to work on that on the next couple days. It's really snuck up on me how fast this conference is coming. Um, but as you can imagine, with the amount of entomologists going to this thing, this is also like a big old swap meet. Um, well, one, they do have like an exhibit hall where I can buy a bunch of stuff, so there will be a bug merch hall when I get back. Um, but there's also a lot of specimen trading that goes on of stuff that I'm working on with people. They're bringing me stuff, I'm giving them things. People are already emailing me going, "Hey, can I bring back this loan that I took out like 20 years ago, so that like you can take it back to your museum?" Which is all part of it. But one of the things that we are going to do today is find some stuff that I need to take with me. My lab that I worked in as an undergrad, post photos bug mark selection in the Discord. I can do that, Tortilla. I can do that. London Brawley, hello. How are you? Welcome in. Um, yeah. So the first lab that I was ever in undergrad was a Firefly lab, working on lightning bugs or Lampyrids or whatever you want to call them. Hey, Posh. Welcome in. Welcome in. And the grad student that I was working for is still working on that group. I've obviously moved on, switched to ground beetles now. But when I was in Arizona this past summer, I got a couple of really good specimens, including one that uh, might be a new species. Hopeful on that one. So I have my bug bag, my Arizona bug bag that we still have to work through. And so I'm going to dump some of these out, and we are going to find all of the fireflies that are in this bag. They should all be in their separate vials. So I don't think we'll have to do much picking through the specimens, but there's plenty of other cool stuff in here that you guys might want to see. So we're just going to start and see what we've got and just try to find try to find our fireflies. We have gotten good luck on the first pull. We've got a firefly. Chaos, Vi, hello. All right, oops. Turn that back up. Scope properties. Figure video. We'll up this just a bit. Apply. Okay. We've tried this before and it wasn't super successful showing off things in alcohol. So I have a little petri dish over here to the side and then a little set of paper towels here to dry them off so we can see things a little bit better. Oh, my camera is way too big. Unknown. Hello. All right, there we go. Make me smaller. More room for the bugs. So this is Elychnia, or when I started, this was Elychnia. And Elychnia are one of the non-bioluminescent fireflies. So, as adults, not all fireflies actually do the firefly thing. As far as we know, every firefly larva that we've ever discovered does glow. But there are a lot of groups of adults that will use regular, like scent signaling that they don't use the flashing to actually attract mates. And so this was Elychnia, but then it recently, like probably 3 years ago, got moved into Photinus. Is that right? Yeah, Photinus corescus. long time of going gray posh. It's an evolutionary thing. Fireflies the cloak. Yeah. East Coast, phenomenal. When I was a kid, we used to chase fireflies, put them in a jar all the time. And now Florida actually has the most firefly diversity of any state in the U.S. They've got a lot of very restricted ranges, though. So up north in Pennsylvania, where I grew up, there were maybe like 4 or 5 species, but there were bajillions of them. Down here, there's a lot more species, but they're really, really localized, and you won't see as many at one time. I think I've told this story before, but one of the first paid bug jobs that I had was collecting fireflies in Pennsylvania and mailing them to a lab in Idaho, where they were using them to test how the bugs got bats to stay away from them. So they would check it if it was like something with the flashing or if there was a chemical that they would put out. But to test the ones that didn't flash, we wanted the same species, but then they had to paint them. They had to paint the flash organs on the ones that could flash, because if it was a different species, it could be like a different signal that was going to do that. So the professor that I worked for was like, hey, we need X number of fireflies. Can you get them? I'm going to send you all of the supplies and everything to deal with it. And so this was I was 18, 19 at the time. Um, and I would still go home to Pennsylvania for the summers and work at the water park that I did for like 6 years. And so after the water park would close, I would go to the local parks and basically just run around with my net. It was great. It was super super fun. Um, but the first few nights, it was tough. Like we were seeing because we wanted all of the same species, right? And we were looking for Photinus pyralis, which is the Big Dipper firefly. So when the males flash, they swoop in like a J shape. So when they're flying, they will like start the flash up here, scoop down into kind of like a Nike swoop, and then turn off. So we had to find ones specifically doing that flash pattern. And we got, I say we, I took my partner at the time with me. I think we got like 35 that first night, but it took a long time. And I was like, man, he wants hundreds of these. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. But then the next week, I was driving my partner home, and we got stuck at a train crossing. Um, there were train tracks there, and so we, obviously stopped so we wouldn't get hit by the train. But we were right next to like an old abandoned soybean field, and we were sitting there, waiting for this train to go by to look out my window, and there are thousands, like thousands and thousands of Photinus pyralis. And I'm like, well, shit. I guess I know where we're coming back to. So then the next time we needed to go out and get them, we pulled over on the side of the road at this like abandoned field, and just we had big nets, like 18-inch net head sort of thing, like real easy, and quite literally just spun in circles for like 5-10 minutes, and we came out with like 500 and some odd fireflies. And so I had to message my professor, and I was like, hey, I've got way more than you asked for. Like, is this okay? Like, can we still send these? And he was like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. The more, the better. So I did that a couple more times throughout the summer. And we sent them to this lab in Idaho that did a bunch of cool stuff with bats. And then when I came back to school the next semester, my professor handed me like $500 in cash. And that's how I started working in that lab. But that was not this. Um, Everything that we're going to look at tonight was in Arizona. Yes, Tortilla. What are we waiting for? Roach. Hello. I didn't see you come in. How you doing? Dollar Firefly. Yeah. Penny per cigarette, but it wasn't a per Firefly basis. It was like a set amount, because that 500 was just the one night. I did this a couple things. Bat Lab at Boise State. I think so. Purgatory. Um, Zombie J7. Hello, welcome in. How are you guys? Uh, I think so. Purgatory. This was a long time ago, and I wasn't as plugged in as to like who was doing what research at that point. Um, that sounds correct, but I don't fully remember who I was mailing them to, so I don't even know how I would check that. And this was before I would have done anything that was like warranting getting credit on that publication, so I'm probably in an acknowledgement section somewhere. Um, but yeah, I don't know. But the other funny thing about this was, so the guy that I worked for, the guy in Florida that was paying me to do this, he would mail me like dozens of these little plastic snap cap vials. And then I would have to, and money to like overnight these things to Idaho. But so I had to prepare all of these little vials, which meant I was taking a pin like this, like like a glass headed, a pin like this, not an insect pin, but one of these kind that's a little bit thicker, to poke air holes in the top of the vial. But then the really funny part, um, they needed water and some sort of food to make it to Idaho. And so we would go out, we would catch all of these things, and then we would have to go back, separate them into little vials. Um, and then I was told to put apple in there, like the tiniest little slice of apple, so it would be just enough moisture to get them, overnighted to where they were going. And because I had to do this after work and after we collected all of the fireflies, I ended up going to this same grocery store next to my partner's house at like 10:45 at night. So every night for like a couple weeks, I would go in and buy a singular apple. And then we would go back and take a little bit of a razor blade or a knife and just cut the tiniest little piece off of it, shove it in the vial, pack up the fireflies, drop them off before we went to work, and then do the whole thing over again. So, yes, that was my first paying bug job. Was to collect fireflies. Now, as a couple of you have mentioned, the West Coast fireflies do not don't glow as adults. There are a couple here that do have light organs though, so that's pretty exciting. Arizona, they're definitely not as common, but there are some that glow in Arizona, which is very cool. Staff wonder where the single apple guy. Absolutely, Danny. Absolutely. And I knew that going into this. But anyway, so this is Elychnia, which is one of the non-luminescent fireflies. Just got moved recently into Photinus, which is one of the ones that do glow. And if we look down here at the abdomen, there are no light organs. Um, it's hard to see what we aren't seeing right now because we don't have a good comparison of like this is what one with light organs does look like. But give me 1 second and I can grab one. That's awesome, Molly. Okay, we're back. I went and grabbed my little reference box of fireflies so we can see what ones with light organs look like. Just so we can see what we're not seeing on the Elychnia. Donkus, the reference box is the best thing that I've ever done. it's so helpful even to me who like I know this stuff pretty well, but on some of the groups where I'm not as familiar with it, it's very nice to just have that available there. It's like having your it's like my bug library. You and Taki have fun. We'll be here when you get back. Um, but yeah, so this is the end of the abdomen of a species that does glow. As you can see, those last two abdominal segments are a lot lighter in color, and that allows the light that's made inside with this chemical reaction to be seen a lot easier. So this is a glowing species, and Donkus made a comment, and I'll just show it off before she heads out too long. Um, it does have this really neat pink chest. So the prosternum here, right between the front and the middle legs, bright pink. And then you'll also notice that this thing's got some big old peepers. If you think about it, if you are using a visual cue like a flash to locate um, prospective mates, you need to be able to interpret that signal. And that means that rather than have like big fluffy antenna for those moths that use other chemicals, these guys need to be able to see the flashes. So male fireflies in particular have like these insane eyes, like giant eyeballs. Um, so even though they're not the easiest thing to sex externally, meaning like without dissections or anything like that, if you have one with gigantic eyeballs like this, it's like pretty sure it's a male. Um, there are some exceptions where females will have big eyes. The femme fatale fireflies, or the ones where the females will mimic the flash patterns of males or of females of other species to lure males in so they can eat them. Those females have really big eyes as well, as can be seen with this gal. So this is a female, one of the femme fatales that will trick male fireflies, and she's also got some big ol' eyes. Male fireflies tend to be the ones that are most common that you see because they're out actively looking for mates. Females tend to be the ones that hunker down on plants and aren't as active, but are still going to be flashing in response to the males. I got you, zombie. I got you. This is as far in as we're going though. This is 50x. So if we go down, get the edges of the pronotum in focus. We can bring it up slowly, and then you can get like the full. It's also very cute. You can see he's got little hairs right on the top of his forehead. There's seedy there. But yeah, right here at like this part of the zoom in, that glare is actually giving us a really nice view of all of those little facets on the eyes, or basically the little pixels that help them see better. So yeah, this one again is a male who does light up, and you can tell that because it has the uh, the yellow abdominal segments. And it won't always be the full segment either. Sometimes parts of the segment will be lighter. We'll see some of that again in just in a bit as we keep finding things in this bag. Um, but back to our original Firefly. This Elychnia here does not have, or I guess has that all dark abdominal segment. So there's no light pieces here for them to be able to flash with. The cool thing about this, there is a very common, I'm going to keep calling it Elychnia because it probably should still be in its own genus. But there's an East Coast Elychnia that's called Elychnia koroska, or the winter firefly. Super widespread, very well-defined species. But in Arizona and a lot of parts of the West, the Elychnia patterns are not as consistent, and nobody has really taken the time to look at them to figure out if they are the same thing or how many different species there are. So hopefully this one will help us out with that. It's been in high proof ethanol since this summer. So hopefully we'll be able to get some DNA out of it, grind up a couple legs, and maybe get a better idea of what is going on. Okay. I appreciate the offer, Roach, but we're looking for these because we've got somebody who's going to do it, or somebody that's going to primarily do it and let me help. So this one, much smaller, as you can see, but this one also has those last two abdominal segments that are a little bit lighter than the rest. Marie, welcome back. Glad you're feeling better. But those last two abdominal segments tell us again that this is. Does last segment get more pigment structured over time when it doesn't need to be pronounced anymore? How does that work? That's a good question, Zombie. I don't know. We do have some firefly larvae in the bag here, so we can look at some in a little bit. But because the adults and the larvae are, or the larvae in particular, are pretty hard to find, there are only 5 species of firefly in the US that have their larvae described. And that's out of, please hold, I'm Googling, almost 200 species. So we don't know a lot about the firefly larvae in the US. And in fact, one of my first like science project ever was somebody sent us larvae of the winter firefly, the East Coast Elychnia. And I dissected everything, and we described the larva, and it hasn't been published yet, but I'm hopeful that we're working on it again now. So I have larvae, and I have no clue what they're from. And those 5 in particular, I don't know specifically how it works, but they go through a pupal phase. Fireflies are beetles, so they go through the same metamorphosis that like a butterfly does. They go into a pupal stage, and so that's when they kind of rearrange everything from being a larva into being an adult. And so I doubt there's any correlation between how much is glowing as a larva versus how much is glowing as an adult and like what that pattern is. Um, but truthfully, don't think that anybody's looked at it. Very ripe area for examination. So this one is a lot smaller. This is, I think this is the genus Parathausus, and it is maybe 4 millimeters long. But if you were here on Friday when we did the amber stream, we were looking at fireflies that were in amber. And one of the things that we talked about as being defining for fireflies was having that the pronotum or that shield of the neck kind of coming out and covering the head. And so even though this doesn't look like your typical firefly, if we can position it upright enough, we can see that it basically has a little visor on. That pronotum pretty clearly coming up over the top, so you can't see where the antennae go in, and you can't see like the top of the eye. There's also some other good collecting information around here. Obviously, you always keep your data with your specimens, and I'll print real labels for the person before I pass these off. But we had like 25 beetle experts running around in southern Arizona for like 2 weeks, and we hand collected maybe 6 or 7 fireflies. But we were running different kinds of traps, and these were either flight intercept traps, we call FITs, or a V-shaped flight intercept trap, which is a VFIT. And what flight intercept traps mostly do? What's up, Glacial? Hello, hello. Flight intercept traps are like a thin piece of plastic that's hung vertically, and when insects fly into it, they're primarily targeted for insects that will fly down when they encounter an obstacle. So they hit the plastic and they're like, "Oh, what the hell's going on?" And then they fly downwards, and then underneath there's like a little trough that catches them in liquid. So the nice thing about those is that you can just set them and they collect all night long and all day long. So you don't have to be out actively collecting the whole time to get the same stuff that you do with these traps. The problem is there's a lot of stuff that you catch that you're like, what am I ever going to do with this? Thankfully, the community is large enough that like there's interest in that bycatch. So when we were sorting this, we of course pulled all of the beetles out. I pulled all of the ground beetles. I pulled out all the fireflies. Other folks were pulling scarabs and longhorn beetles and like whatever groups they were interested in. But then we had all of this biomass of flies, of true bugs, of, all these other groups that we pulled out and saved because stuff from southern Arizona is really, really valuable research material. Because sometimes, or a lot of the time, the stuff that's in southern Arizona is like just barely getting into the US. A lot of this stuff is Mexican that's like just eking into the US, as opposed to if you're collecting, in Kansas or whatever. All of that stuff is squarely going to be like pretty common US material. But a lot of the stuff that you get in the southeastern corner of Arizona, where you are maybe a 20-minute drive from the border, is a lot of this cool sort of neotropical stuff that like just barely peeks into the US. So even if it's pretty common stuff like down there, it's very common in the area, it might be super rare in the grand scheme of things in the US. Um, so we pulled all of those flies and true bugs and stuff, and we separated out those groups, and we were able to give them to other scientists that were interested in them. But uh, this was during the course that I was teaching, so I was like, all right, y'all, I've got dibs as an instructor. I've got dibs on ground beetles, and I've got dibs on fireflies. Everything else, I will help you identify. You guys can have all that, but those two, I would at least like to see before you take them in case it's something interesting. And if it is, and I'm going to take it from you, I will give you something in trade. A family that you haven't collected yet, or something like that. So I try to be fair with it, and it's usually a very give and take community of people who have their own interests. So what's interesting to them, I don't care about, and what stuff that I care about, they usually don't. So it's a very uh, there's a lot of bugs exchanging hands at these courses. Oh yeah, Kansas, and I know you're nearby. Don't capital D colon that. I can say things about Kansas because I lived there for a little bit. I did my master's in Kansas. I'll give you ground beetle for roach. That's that's more than fine. Yeah, this one came out of an FIT trap, a flight intercept trap. So it's just got a singular vertical panel. The VFIT, it's a hanging piece of plastic that you put a metal rod down the middle, so it hangs like this, and so that way things can like follow the plastic down, and it kind of just funnels them in a little bit better. Yeah, yeah, I did. Not just Kansas City. So this one's cool. That was the only firefly that we got out of that flight intercept trap while it was running from July 15th to July 19th. So not super productive, but good good specimen. Um Now here, these are interesting. These are from Whistler Park. So these are Elychnia as well. These are the same genus as the first guy that we looked at. Um, Species where one of the FITs are more productive. Yeah. So the VFIT was really only pioneered, like they started making VFITs in like 2018. It was a friend of mine, an older guy that has lived and collected in Arizona for decades and decades. It was his design where he was like, what if we funneled stuff in rather than just having it be flat? What if we like funneled them down into the trap pan? And so he started running them locally and was finding crazy stuff. Um, the thing with VFIT traps and trapping in general, rather than like actively being out there collecting stuff, is that you can leave traps for a long time and they collect all day, all night, and during all parts of the season. So if there's like one night when this particular species is doing its mating flight and you have a VFIT trap set up, you will then probably have like the world's longest series of this rare little beetle. Um, they have done some side by side comparisons between FITs and VFITs, and the VFITs get something like 45 to 60% more material in them. So the VFIT is a big improvement, and yes, I'm looking at uh, this next vial that this is all from a VFIT from the same dates that we only had that one in the FIT. So a lot more in the VFIT on this one. But first, these other Eliknia. If we flip them over, these do not look like the same one that we had earlier. These are quite a bit darker overall. Their pink is a little bit darker as well. Um, and the cool thing about these is that they were collected um, up at like 8,500 feet. They were like really high up on this mountain. And elevation is another really cool thing that separates a lot of species. You get different speciation rates and you get different niches as you kind of climb and go down. So the first Eliknia that we got was down at like 1,600 feet. So now if we go up another like 5,000 feet up this mountain, that's where we got these two. And could they be different? Yes. Could they be the same? Also, yes. But we just don't know, and that's like part of it. Uh, Kukulos. Um, True fireflies are called kukulos. Interesting. I'd never heard that before. Kukuyo. Marie, do you know if you're talking about fireflies or if you're talking about the glow in the dark click beetles? Okay, fireflies. Yes, yes, they are. Um, except these ones don't glow. This is one of the genera, or at least one of the subgroups, that uses chemicals to sense things. So they don't actually light up. You might have missed this right at the beginning of the stream, but all, as far as we know, all firefly larvae glow, but not all of the adults glow. There's a pretty big subset of them that use just chemical communication. So this is, I think, I remember catching these guys mating. Um, the one on the left has much thicker antennae than the one on the right, and it's a little bit smaller. So what that's telling me is that this one here is probably the male, and this one here is probably the female. And we can also, we won't do any fluffing because firefly genitalia are actually not that interesting. Um, but if we just look at the end of the abdomen, you can see that these are two different sexes. Like that at last abdominal plate is completely different on the one on the right than the one on the left. So yeah, it's very likely that this was a mating pair when I collected them. They retain whatever organ that glows as adults even if they don't use it. Yeah, Glacial, I think they do, but it's internal. They go through that whole metamorphosis process where they go from larva to adult, sort of like a butterfly does. Um, and so the the proteins and the pieces that exist that glow as a larva are there in the adult, just where they go. Um, Again, I don't really know how that works. Yeah, Marie, fireflies are so cool. For those of you who live in non glowing firefly world, I feel real bad for you because it is one of like nature's treasures, 100%. Um, but yeah, that was really cool. Who said that about the antenna? Roach said that about the antenna. Um, but yes, because this is not one of the glowing species, they have to use the chemicals to find each other. And just like with the moths, they use those antenna. The amount of surface area on the antenna tells you how they're able to find each other. And again, now that we also know about the eyeball thing, even though this is a non-glowing species, if you look on the left right now, that's a male. So look how big and bulgy his eyes are compared to the female here on the right. They're a lot flatter and they're not as prominent. So males, even in non-glowing species, will generally have better eyes. Because even if they are tracking things down by chemicals, they still have to make that like last there she is, I'm going to go down there. They're Dracula caves. Yeah, definitely. That big hooded pronotum. So that's all like the neck piece. And that's one of the characteristics of fireflies is that it has it like completely covering over the head. So if we were to flip these over, you would just see the pronotum. The head would be totally underneath. But this is cool again because this is a male female pair, and because it was up really high. Um, this is, I would guess, different a different species than the one that is down lower that we looked at earlier. But again, we really have no idea. But now with these specimens, we might be able to figure it out and either match these up to an existing species description, or um, there is the slight chance that they're actually like completely new to science. I know I mentioned earlier that there was a possibility of a new species in this material. Those were not the ones that I was talking about. So there may be two different ones. But let's open our next vial. And this one is a VFIT trap that was set in the same area as the regular FIT that we only had the one specimen in. So now this is the V trap, and we have this many. So even though the VFIT and the regular FIT were right next to each other, this is the same date range. There's a lot more in here. So there was something about the VFIT that worked better for catching these fireflies in particular. These ones are definitely Paraphausis. Do I know which ones? No. Part of sending these off is that they're going to an expert who will be able to identify all of these for me. Um, Keep what he wants for DNA extractions. Maybe we'll work on something together about all of this. But uh, with things that have big series like this, I will eventually get back identified exemplars. So there's, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 17 specimens here. Um, at some point, I will get identified material back so that I can then add these to my new collection at work. It's very unlikely that we have this species in the collection that I'm at now because this is an Arizona thing and I'm in Florida. So it's possible that somebody else had collected them before, but maybe not in this quantity and maybe not after they've been identified. So this is a pretty solid haul, and there's actually two different kinds in here. Uh, this larger one, I think, is Pyropygia. But you can see kind of the size differences that we've got here. And then also the differences with the pronotum. It's a little hard. I don't want to have to totally dry these ones off. So we'll see. It's okay in the alcohol. It gets a little blurry. We won't do a lot of examination in it like this. But more things. I think these two that are on top of each other right now, I think are different genera. Um, but I do not know. But like the others, you can see that these end abdominal segments are light, so these are actually glowing ones. Only 9 antennal segments. Is that true? Wrong. We got 11, bestie. Yes. Okay. Yes, Roach. The other two were hidden under the pronotum. Um, that's kind of the whole thing with fireflies is that again they have that hood over it. Um, but here let's look at one that I just took out of the alcohol, so there's no more glare. We can get here. Here's it's 11. I promise. Scouts honor. What is that? This? It was never in Scouts. 11. It's okay to be wrong. I it is totally fine. You guys are here to learn, right? That's the point of stream. Um there are no dumb questions. I am always happy to answer questions again, even if it's something that we've covered already. So like I don't want you guys ever to feel like it's bad. Um, I may give you a little bit of a joking nudge like that, but I truly promise that it is. I am more than happy to go over stuff again. So yeah, definitely don't worry about that. You guys are always more than welcome to make guesses or suggestions or whatever, and we can learn together from there. It's totally okay. Being wrong is punishable by death. Uh, I'm not gonna do it. It might be punishable by death, but I'm not gonna be the one enacting the punishment. So you guys do whatever you want there. Oh, Tortilla volunteers. Okay, that's why that's why we pay her the big bucks. Um, Beetle is in Dutch as Kiever, so that's another little tidbit. Yes, um, yes. I'm gonna leave the Firefly up for a second. Um, it's that's pretty close to German, which is Käfer. Um, I have just the book for this. I will go check my shelves, see if I can find it quickly. But I'll give you guys the lo-fi Jurassic Park hip hop beats. While I go check the bookshelf real quick. Okay, that took like way less time than I thought. I found the book way quicker than I thought I was going to. But this Insecten is a 1959 German entomology book. So I took German all through middle and ooh, am I yelling? I didn't change any settings. No, nine, nine, nine. Okay. Um. Anyway, yeah. So I took German through middle school and all through high school. I did a European trip in 11th grade. We went to Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Italy. So I picked this up, or a friend of mine actually picked this up. This was a birthday present a long time ago. But it's really cool. It's got a lot of really nice photos in it. Um, very cool scorpions fliege, which means scorpion fly. Fliege is fly in German. Um, so I've learned a lot through this of like German words for German words for different bugs. This was completely happenstance. Um, Same page as the scorpion fly. If we look right right there, that's the family Lampyridae, which are the fireflies, and that says Luftkäfer, which is light beetle, or the other option is Glühwürmchen, which is glowworm. So that's kind of neat. Um, right to the page that we were of things that we were talking about. But yeah, K A umlaut FER is beetle in German. And in the US, glowworms and fireflies are different things. But that's a common name misconception. But yeah, I mean, it's just like a really good insect reference. Lots of cool pictures. All German text, though. So if I was going to read it, I was going to need to learn German or like remember German. It had been a hot second since I had taken German uh, when I got that book. So I haven't fully gone through it, but it's helpful enough. I can generally kind of muddle my way through the German entomology terms based on like what I remember of normal German conversation phrases. Because surprisingly, high school German does not really go into entomological languages. So not much we can do there. Um, I did also uh, yeah, sorry about the pinch. Um, I also got a couple of beetles from where were those from? I think they were the Netherlands. Um, I'm checking my collection records right now. Species list. I would like to see Paradromius. 19 occurrence records. Oh, Belgium. Okay, yeah. Okay, Martin. That's really funny, Molly. Uh, that's fine, Roach. I don't think that's disrespectful. I'm honestly not truly sure of my family heritage. There's probably some German in there. Um, but anyway, what I was looking up, I had a friend who sent me a bunch of like loose specimens from Belgium, and there's a book about the ground beetles of Belgium and the surrounding areas. That's obviously a language that I do not speak. It is an entomology key trying to use a language that I do not speak on species that I have never seen before, so I have no reference for what these things could be asking. Pickle! Thank you for the toes, Pickle. Welcome in. Thanks for stopping by. Um, so I ordered this book, not knowing how I was going to get through these specimens. Um, and I started reading the key, and I was like, oh, You know, I can kind of get what this is saying. Um because I knew what sort of things that like a ground beetle key would be asking about for certain groups, and I had enough of a working understanding of German to sort of translate the Dutch that that was in this book. So I actually ended up working through those beetles from Belgium pretty quick. There's a lot of really neat stuff in there before, so that was super super cool. But yeah, I didn't expect that my high school German would ever come in handy in this career field after I made like the drastic shift over into bugs. But sure enough, keying out beetles from Belgium, uh, I could do well enough with with my high school German. So that was pretty cool. But anyway, yes, Kafer is beetle, and that was a long-winded way to get around that. So I think it was Glacial that said there was an antennal segment that they couldn't see. So let's flip this over, readjust, and see if we can get an accurate count. I know the consensus was 11, but again, I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page and feels good about where we are before. Oh, oh, they couldn't see a mouth. Okay. Well, we're not going to be able to get much done here. That is much too small of anything to have any real reference on the mouth parts. A lot of these fireflies do have reduced mouth parts as adults, so that's partially why you probably couldn't see them. But also, that is just a fairly small specimen. So let me get out probably the biggest firefly that I have, which is that nice femme fatale that we were looking at earlier. Shrimp! What is up? Welcome back. It has been a while for you. So, based on what I was saying earlier about the biology of this species in particular, this is a female femme fatale firefly, which means that she will make the flash patterns of different species and lure the males of that species in, and then she will eat them. And because of that, uh, she obviously has to have some pretty big, pretty impressive mandibles. So on those last ones, they were pretty small. I don't know that they eat as adults. Again, that's like a total blind spot for things. We don't have a lot of natural history information on them. So it's possible that they're feeding on things like pollen as adults, but a lot of them just don't have functioning or very large mouth parts as adults. However, if you are eating whole other beetles, you're going to have some pretty gnarly mandibles like we're seeing here. Commute home. See you, Danny. Thanks for stopping in, and safe travels. But you can see this gal here has really wicked mandibles. Um, if we just turn a little bit more, we're looking straight down, and you can see how large and kind of overlapping that mandible is going to the right on screen, and the other one kind of goes around underneath on the left. So this one very clearly a predatory individual. They're going to be eating meat as an adult. Those little ones, truthfully, like I said, I don't know what they're feeding on. Their mouth parts might have been there and just like super reduced, because those specimens were maybe a fifth the size of this one. So this is my largest, and then let's pull just one of the ones that we were just trying to look at earlier and set it nearby. So that one that's on the right hand side now, not on the pin, is the one we were just trying to look at before this one. So obviously much smaller. And even if it did have mandibles, it would be feeding on much, much smaller things than other fireflies. Yes, quite teeny. The big one would definitely eat this small one if it had the choice or had the option. But okay, so I am going to put that last batch back in the vial again. Give me just 1 second, because I'm going to have to be very careful not to tear legs or wings or elytra or anything. So use the super fine forceps to just kind of grab up what I can. Zombie, thank you for the resub. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 3 months already is crazy. That's the whole time. That is the whole time I've been streaming. Any bugs small enough to actively hunt stuff like tardigrades? Yeah, yeah. I bet some of those parasitoid wasps that are like uber tiny, some of those are probably parasitizing tardigrades, I would expect. And also a lot of mites. Mites feed on them, especially in like the baby mite stage. So that's obviously going to be even smaller than the adult mite. So I bet in fact there are. Okay, 4. Oh, 3 months in advance. That's even better. Thank you. Ooh, this is fun. This is good. This is not a firefly. big set of tools over here. We're gonna have to go to the wide for this one. Tardigrades in your eyelashes. I don't think so. I think your eyelashes are probably not damp enough for tardigrades. Okay. We got a big guy. I don't know if I'd say guy. We got a big baby. Influencer hand on a giant beetle grub is kind of crazy. So this is a longhorn beetle grub. That's an emote? We got an emote? We do have a grub emote, right? Yeah. Grub. Different kind of grub, though. The bits. Thank you, Roach. Thank you for the 1 bit. So the grub in the emote is a scarab. The grub in the hand is a longhorn beetle. So if we switch back to the microscope, we can look at some of... Thank you, Tortilla. We've got some really interesting stuff going on. Roach with the 3. Okay. So we are currently underneath the beetle. We're looking at the underside. You can see its little itty bitty legs. So that's the first thing that I would like you to take notice of, are its little itty bitty tiny legs. But it doesn't really need legs doing what it's doing. Talking about insects getting greasy post-mortem, is that one that would do this? Yes, for sure. This was in alcohol, and this is just going to stay in alcohol, so we won't have to worry about that. It's already soaked up everything and kind of killed all the bacteria that's going to be in the gut. But yes, if we were to try to dry this out, it probably would get pretty greasy and pretty gross pretty fast. So longhorn beetles are wood borers. The female will generally take her ovipositor, lay an egg down into like a crack on a split dead log. The baby will hatch out in there, and then they chew through the wood and either get nutrients from the fungus that is in the log, or occasionally they will be predatory. This one is just a wood feeder, But to get around inside of a log, you don't have to be that mobile. So mostly this is going to just kind of, squirm and squiggle along. Um, but it does have little legs for when that would be helpful. The other thing that we're looking at right now, like I said, is the underside of the head. So we are seeing those palp structures that we usually do on adults, but on a much reduced scale here. So these on the outside are the maxillary palps. And then this central piece here is the labium that has these two little labial palps on it. Above that, that hardened black piece here is going to be the mandible. So if we flip it, I guess, kind of head on, he's sitting staring up at you now. If we see this, this is the top of the head capsule. This is the labrum, which is like the top lip of the insect. And then again, these very powerful mandibles right here and right here. The eyes on immature beetles are super reduced. And I am actually having a hard time finding them. Huh. I don't know where its eyes are. That's a good question, zombie. Um, I I don't see them. Oh, there we go. Yep. Okay, we're good. We're solid. Um, okay. If we zoom in here, let me check a term real quick. Stemmata. That's what it is. So insect immatures don't have uh, compound eyes like the adults do. They have basically what are going to be ocelli, like the simple eyes that we see on the top of the heads of some insects. Larvae have a very similar thing to the ocelli, but I knew they were called something different. They're called stemmata, Stemmata. And so rather than looking for like eyes proper, we are going to be looking for just little coverings that sort of look like little jewels on the side of the head, like we would look for ocelli on an adult. So the first thing here, this is the antenna. This little knob right here, that's the antenna. Yes, yes, it is Starberry. Very, very good. So right here, then, behind the antenna, so there's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Those little dots off to the side are the stomata, or the eyes of this larva. Now, again, if you're living inside of a log, you don't need a ton of vision. So it's not gonna be the best eye in the world, but that's what that was. Um, Now, if we move down a little bit, we can see some other structures. These are the spiracles. It's probably darken logs, to be fair. Yeah, absolutely. So these little bits now are the spiracles. So these are two shiny dots on the bottom of the face. I'll go back up and look in a second. But yes, so these are the breathing holes. Just like going down the sides of the hissing cockroaches that that we have at Alveus. Uh, these are the little windows that allow oxygen to get into the body. Now, insects don't have a closed respiratory system like we do. So all of our oxygen goes in and gets condensed in the lungs, and then all of our blood circles by the lungs at some point to get oxygen added into it. Insects are just kind of open on the inside, so they don't have a closed circulatory system, so there's no veins or arteries or anything that transports the blood around. They just have a dorsal aorta, which is like the heart, that basically forces the hemolymph or the insect blood kind of in one direction. But then if there's no centralized system for getting the oxygen in, it all just diffuses through a series. I knew as soon as I said it, Roach, somebody was going to pick up on it. They have a series of tubes that are called trachea that open to the outside. So the spiracle, these little structures that we're looking at right now, attached to a trachea, which is a tube that goes into the body, and then those split even further into smaller tubes that are called tracheoles. And the oxygen just kind of goes in and diffuses across those little tiny tracheoles inside the body, and as the blood goes through everything, the oxygen just kind of passively gets picked up. So that's how insects get oxygen. It's very, very different. Only saying the breathing like that only works because they're so tiny. If they were bigger, they would just like die. Yes, definitely. If you get that's the whole idea behind like why bugs used to be able to get so huge, like Meganura, the dragonflies that had like 3-foot wingspans, was because they could support more oxygen getting diffused because there was more oxygen in the environment at that time. But with our current levels, yes, it does in fact limit how big stuff can get because this system only works up to a certain size. Okay, if we go back up to the front, we were talking about shiny patches. Why not just have more holes? It's not one, there's a limitation to that because spiracles are bilaterally symmetric. So your spiracles are only on the abdomen. So you can only have the insect abdomen is usually 10 segments. So you can have at most 20 spiracles. but um, the surface area inside of the trachea can only be so big. Um, Surface area doesn't scale with volume. Exactly, Molly. So that's also why like we have beetles that are a certain size, because any bigger than that, their exoskeletons would be like the surface area to volume ratio of the exoskeleton is pretty specific. And so like we've evolution has maxed that out in a lot of things. So it's just how the system works. By the palps, there are two shiny bulbs. Oh, are we talking about this? Are we talking about this? So that you got a good eye there. Um, Looking at it now, knowing that it's not an eye, do you have a guess as to what that is? Bueller. Bueller. It's not an eye. A little plate. Yeah, sort of. Let me. Let's see what I can do here. Okay. So I just opened up the mandibles a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean all the way. So now we're looking basically straight down the mouth parts. Let's get you guys in there a little bit better. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Very, very good. It's called the mandibular condyle. So it's not fully like a ball and socket joint, like your hip, but it has to be smooth because that's where that part of the mandible rubs against the rest of the head capsule when these things chew. So here, uh, now that this has kind of been opened, you can see that. Well, maybe you can see. Okay, hopefully now. You can see that when I move the mandible, that's the pivot point. So that shiny structure is holding the mandible into the head capsule, which is like the whole thing. And because that's where it actually moves across, that part is shiny, so there's no friction, so this guy can chew no problem. And the muscle attachments for the mandibles are basically right on the other side of that condyle, so that's what allows them to actually control the opening and closing. So that shiny piece was shiny and definitely looks different than the rest of the head, but that's because that's where the mandibles articulate as it's getting to chew. Yeah, Molly, exactly. We do also have mandibular condyles. Okay, we looked at spiracles. One for the road. Let's look at fancy butthole. It is not, yeah, anal slit. Rogue is a real one. Remembers the good old days. Um, this one, I don't know how diagnostic the butt is in this group. Um, I know it is useful in scarabs, but if we zoom way in there, you can see. Hammy Dam, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. You can see on those structures that there are little hairs, and those hairs are probably diagnostic. Um, but again, I don't for sure know. We'll allow that. It is just alcohol. I promise, Molly. This thing has been in alcohol since like July. So Emery Murray. Hey, we don't pull any punches here. We got the hard science facts where we look at all kinds of goodies. Um, it's part of the process. It really is. Definitely not your normal Twitch content, but it's what we've got here. Also, before we get too far away from it, several of you I have seen in other chats. I have Chatterino turned on so I can see when you guys are talking about me in Alveus Extended Universe streams. Um, I do quite appreciate the votes of confidence for League of Your Own streamer. Um, I think that's crazy. I don't think we are quite there yet. Um, the category fits. Like we were just saying, nobody else has shown Bug Butt on stream. But unfortunately, we have not reached the hours requirement. We need to be at 200 hours. We are at 65. So, while I do appreciate it, go exercise your rights to vote elsewhere, and we can maybe reconvene the plug for this category next year. I'm not. I can't do a subathon. I have a conference coming up. Um, I'm just not gonna get there. I'm not gonna get there this year, but maybe next year for sure. Yes, that is the plan. So I that is just to say you can absolutely vote for other people. I super appreciate uh even the consideration for a nomination. Um, but I don't have the hours. I do not want you guys to waste that vote. But next year maybe we campaign for it a little bit. We get the real PC set up. We maybe do a couple more hours. We keep regular throughout the year. We can definitely get to that 200. So, um, yes, well, next year. Next year, next year. Okay. I found the cool vial. I found the cool vial that I wanted to look at. Yeah, Roach. That's that sort of stuff too. That's all part of the plan. Um, but we're heading into winter in the northern hemisphere here. Ah, who is the skinny guy? That's the funniest thing you've ever said, Roach. um, yes, in the tube. The skinny one is the one I wanted to show you guys. So this one is uh this one is the one that is fairly likely to be a new species. Um, 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 um. Yes. So these are more Paraphausis. So these are the same ones we were looking at earlier. This one is quite interesting. This is a genus called Chesperito, and it is, I don't think. Yeah, it's not even on Bug Guide because we only know of 3 specimens of this genus in the world. It was described in 2023. No, earlier than that. 2022. Um, yeah, that was debris just kind of floating around. Um, yes, so this is a whole new subfamily of firefly. So that's like separating things at the same level of like within scarab beetles, you have dung beetles and then you have rhinoceros beetles. Like that's the same sort of difference level that we're talking about. Um, the subfamily was only described in 2022, and all of the specimens are known that are known of this subfamily are from Mexico, except for 2 in Arizona. And it just so happens that the guy that I'm giving these specimens to is the one who described this subfamily. This is only the 3rd US specimen of this subfamily of this genus, and it is from a completely different mountain range than the other ones. Uh, the first couple of specimens were from like south central Arizona. This is from the far southeastern corner. So it's possible that this same species is all across the bottom part of the state and people just haven't collected it before, right? That's definitely possible. Um the other option, the more exciting option, and maybe the one that I'm a little bit convinced by just because I read the paper and I compared it to the known species. Um the second option is that this is undescribed. And I am kind of personally leaning that way at the moment. Um but I am not the expert in this group at all. But the specimen is going to the expert in this group. So, as I can, I will relay updates. You know, if it turns out to be a new thing, um, I'll probably have to sit on it a little bit more, just because nobody else has the specimen. There's not much they can do with it in terms of describing it. But if it's the known species, I'll let you guys know. But if it's new, I'll probably keep it under wraps a little bit longer. But yes, this is super super exciting. Um, we were pulling samples out of these big VFIT traps, and I was sending pictures to this guy that I'm passing the specimens off to, and I sent him this, and I was like, "Hey, is this what I think it is?" And he goes, holy shit, you need to find more. And we found this pretty early on, and I was there for 3 weeks. And this was the only individual that we found of this genus in all of our traps over those 3 weeks. So it's a fairly rare thing in the US at the very least, if not totally new. And this one is a male. We were able to see some bits during the photos earlier, so that will also make it definitive whether or not it's something new or not. So yes, this is very, very cool, and this is in addition to a lot of, all this other stuff that we've pulled out. This is in particular the specimen that I really want to get to my friend, just to see what happens, with it. So yes, this was the vial that I was specifically looking for. Now that we have it, uh, 7.7 million, likely more. Only 12% of them described and named. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. Yeah, so there's over 1 million described species of insect, and the estimates on that vary a ton of what's out there versus what's not. It's a lot easier to have undescribed insects than it is to have like undescribed mammals, but even that still happens. Um, I have a friend who runs a podcast that's called the New Species Podcast. And she has episodes where she talks to scientists about new stuff that they've found. And most recently, they did a really cool episode on a new species of porcupine that was described. The podcast leans bug heavy, obviously because my friend is an entomologist, but also just because bug people are describing more stuff than mammal people. Roach, I've already been on it. So I've never described a new species, but there was a series on like the process of it. And so she had me on talking about like field collecting, just like we're doing now. Like how and when and where people find new stuff. So I do have an episode already. But this is I highly recommend this podcast. It's very interesting, especially if you're into this idea of like describing new stuff. And yeah, so W plug New Species Pod, check that out. But yes, potentially there's a chance for another episode coming up, if this thing turns out to be new, like we think, but we'll have to see. So now that we definitely have this, we can pack it up, make sure it gets back into the vial. And pack it away for travel in a couple days. Also, somebody asked if that's like its natural color. It's a little bit darker in real life, or when it was alive. Alcohol tends to leach color like a little bit, but if you let them dry out, they sort of return sometimes. So all of these have been in alcohol since July, and part of that is you want to preserve the DNA. And 95% ethanol, like what I'm putting them back into now, helps preserve that DNA grade to make it useful. The other thing is, if it's not new, we're definitely going to be able to take a leg off of it in sequence. Uh, um, but yes, regardless if it's new or if it's not, that is a really, really cool specimen. Um, so very excited about that. Let's see. What other fireflies do I have? That is not a firefly. That is not a firefly. 5. That's firefly. That's not a firefly. That's not a firefly. Okay. Freaking math. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I hope that another part of this of doing these streams is kind of demystifying some of the not as glamorous background parts of doing science. So like that one uh weekend where I had to come in and I had to identify all of those beetles that like 90% made to be the same thing. Um that was part of a project, and that project is actually getting presented on at this conference that we're going to in a couple days. So that's one of the behind the scenes things. I don't think it would be fun, and I also wouldn't want to leak it to other science sections of like doing the writing process on stream. Um, but definitely maybe some of the data processing, sort of this other sides of bits. No chats on this one. No, definitely not. Oh, this week. Yes. Chats this week. No stream and no chats at all next week. And it should be on the calendar. Space, I think, moved the time, so we're doing chats now at 8 p.m. Alveus time, and then I think he took me off the schedule for next week while I'm gone. So that should all be updated and whatnot. But in addition to the adults, I know somebody was asking about this earlier. These are larvae. So these are babies. And this was a really cool sample. Chat-led chats. Yeah, go back to the olden days. Uh, just talking amongst each other. Um, I hope you don't find anything, Tortilla. That's the worst part of hotel travel. Um, so these all came out of a leaf litter sample. So we take this big sifter, we kind of shake all the stuff out, and all the goods fall down. We talked about this either on stream or on chats very recently. You shake all the good stuff out of the leaf litter, and then you run it through a funnel. And these were actually collected higher than the Elychnia. So that first firefly specimen that we looked at was at like 1,600 feet. Then there was that thing that was maybe a different species up at like 8,000 feet. These are from probably the sketchiest road that I have ever been on. It's only another 3 miles, but it takes about 45 minutes to get up it, if not longer, because you go up another 1,200 feet in like 3 miles. Um, Absolutely need four-wheel drive. It was harrowing to say the least. It was quite the sketchy road. It was one car wide, and the 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 sides were just like down the mountain. So a little bit crazy to get up to the top. And in 5 years of living in Arizona, I had never been to the top because I heard all of the horror stories about the road. Um, but because this friend of mine and I were going to be here for 3 weeks, we were like, it would be worth it to set traps up there, let them go for like a week and a half at a time, and then check the stuff from up there because nobody really collects up there because it's insane to get up. And so while we were at the top, we took a bunch of leaf litter samples, sifted everything out, and we got all of this stuff in the leaf litter sampling. What is very cool about this is that there are three, probably, species of firefly right here. Um, we don't know who's what yet, but these three here off to this side that all have this sort of like pinkish border are one thing. And I think that's what this little guy is too. You have this one, which is bigger, longer, does not have the pink. And then you have this really small, very rounded pronotum guy right here. So this is either a first instar, meaning this is like the super baby version of those other ones, or this is a separate thing. Then you have the slightly bigger ones with the pink sides. Looks like Basmati rice. Please do not eat the beetle larvae. These are quite rare. We need them. So all four of these are probably the same, and then this guy. I think, based on the larval work that I did back in undergrad, I think this one is the larva of the Elychnia that we were looking at earlier. So those two black ones, those two dark ones with the bright red on the neck. I think this is the larva of that group. He got horns. Sticky up here are the eyes. No. Those are the antenna. So that one's durable. Let's grab this guy out. Dry it off a little bit and see what we can see. Yeah, it's actually really crazy how beetle larvae evolved cat ears. So these again, the cat ears here, this and this, are the antenna. And remember, the eyes on beetle larvae are generally very small and just like little dots, basically. So on this guy, well, he's also very, very flat, if you had not noticed that. But right on like the base of that antennal structure, there is one of those shiny spots, and that is the stomata, or the eye. Looks like a trilobite beetle. Yeah, yeah, it does. Um, they're sort of close. They're all in the sort of like soft beetle realm, um, meaning that the adults don't have like super hard elytra. But yeah, so there's that like little tiny shit. There's a little tiny shit, little tiny spot there on like the base of the antenna that's sort of kind of in focus right now. That's the antenna uh, of this guy. And yeah, if we flip it over, looking at the or we're looking at the bottom right now, but if we flip it to look at the top, frick you, come on. There we go. Sort of. Real leathery, real kind of spiky, neat looking. In my scientific opinion, the scientific term for this is neat looking. Do I have a snail guy at my work? Yes, I do. You know what? I'm lying to you. This one's not a firefly. Are snail guys entomologists? No. Technically, they would be malacologists, but because we have a lot of pest snails, our guy that does snails is also our wasp guy. Um, I totally forgot about this. Um, this is a netwing beetle larva. The other ones in the tube are fireflies. And they're very hard to tell apart generally, which again, forgive me, this was months ago when I collected these and I forgot that we had made this agreement. Um the reason that I remembered is that this guy is super spiky, but then fireflies, this one is like 100% a firefly now. Chat, just trust me, you're gonna have to. I'm the streamer. Um, this one, not as spiky. It's got like rounded sides. And so even though it's not like 100% of the time, fireflies will generally have rounded lateral margins, while the lycids will have spiky lateral margins. Um, I had them all in the same vial. They all came from the same place. And lycids are like the sister family in the US to fireflies. No roach. Different families. Different families, but very, very close. And so we also don't know what this larva is from. And so we just kept it in here with the actual firefly larvae. But it is in fact different. My bad. My bad, y'all. I promise that was not purposeful misinformation. Um, but yes, these pink-sided ones and the other one, that really small one that we saw, definitely fireflies. Spiky edged one, netwing beetle. That's my bad. Now, with that embarrassing mistake out of the way, I'm going to pack these up. Space Camp, we had that discussion like literal minutes before you came in. Um, the long and the short of it is, I really appreciate everyone suggesting that, but I am simply not at the hours to do that. Um, but we can definitely campaign for next year after we grow some more, get some more hours in, get some other cool stuff happening on stream. So, thank you. But uh not this year. Ooh, hydrate. I'm out of liquids. Hold on, C pause. Yes, right. My ICT. $200 is so much. I was I saw that when it came up and like when I did my nominations, and I was like, you know, that's something. Um, and I checked my stats. I was like, oh yeah, I feel like I've been streaming a lot, and I feel like that's just because up until September I had never streamed before, so it feels like I've done a lot since then. But I checked my all-time hours, and I was like, oh, it's only 65. um, yeah, so a lot fewer than I thought, but next year if we start in January, we're definitely at 200 hours before streamer games submissions or streamer awards submissions, sorry. uh so yeah, we'll clock that again next year. Like I said, just not going to happen this time around, but I do really appreciate even the consideration for such. um 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. There we go. There we go. 8.3 days full streaming. Yes, that is a lot. I did. Someone suggested earlier of just doing like a bugathon, and I was like, if I stayed live the entire time I was at the conference next week, we would get there. But we're not allowed to do that because some of this stuff is like new groundbreaking science stuff that's like not fully reported yet. So we can't live stream it there, but also we're not we're just not gonna do 24-hour streams because you guys would then have to see me sleep, and that's scary to think about. Calathus, I pulled this out so we wouldn't have that. 9 o'clock. Wait, 8:30. Yeah, okay, we got a little bit still. Live stream of Calypso. That's interesting. Full time ant cam would be something. Um, I'll leak to you guys though. I'll probably be able to leak some stuff. So when I come back, oh, Starberry, This is Calypso. Yeah, so technically, the queen is Calypso, but since it's the whole colony is just like is just called Calypso. So she's doing her thing. But yes, 24-hour ant cam I think would be interesting. Um, but I think it would require more ants first. Because we are only at like 15 individuals right now, and they'd run out of stuff to do pretty quick. But they have moved the cricket a little bit. It's like right at the edge of their tunnel now, like the Martys. Yeah, exactly like the Martys. Colonial names. The colony is for the whole thing, or the name is for the whole colony at once. Do they get bored? I hope not, Sarah. They have it's still pretty small. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're still in this like 5 by 5 inch box. Um, but I will occasionally do enrichment stuff in there. So like putting different food items, different soils. So they have like some textural differences to play around with. So I try to keep it interesting for them. I don't know how much there has been done on like the benefits of enrichment on invertebrates. Surely it can't be bad for them. But in terms of how much they actually need it, uh, I don't think we really know that yet. But I err on the side of like, why not? So yeah, we test a little bit. We test a little bit of different stuff every now and again. But because this is my first ant colony that I've like been able to keep and start up, um, I am taking all of the information and all of the recommendations from professionals, meaning my friends that have been studying ants for a really, really long time. Um, and just keeping like the bare bones setup for the most part, because every time that you do put something into the enclosure, there's a risk of like something going wrong, right? If I have soil that I get from Home Depot that's marked organic but somehow got sprayed, we could be introducing pesticides or mites or all kinds of other stuff. So whenever I do it, it's like a pinch at a time, and then I will take it out every now and again. Um, but yes, I would like to keep them alive at the bare minimum. And maybe as we get better at keeping ants, we'll be able to. I don't want to say play because that's not the right word for it. Experiment a little more once we have like this is what they have to have, and this is stuff that we can introduce that would be more naturalistic for them, but would potentially be harder to maintain. Um, so yeah, that's a down the line thing. Leaf cutter ant colonies that people have with ropes going between the tanks and walking on vines. Yes, I have Roach. Uh, the guy who designed the ant enclosure at the American Museum of Natural History, they've got like these big glass bubbles all over the place, and they have like a ceiling walk so they can walk upside down and stuff. Maya and I met that guy at the conference that we met at last summer. So yes, I am aware of those things, but leafcutter ants you need permits for. And this ant that I found basically in my backyard, I do not need a permit for. So we are going to stick to locally sourced free ants for now. Um, but just like anything, and the Martys help explain it, the tarantulas help explain it, the roaches help explain it. Of like, the pet trade is a really big thing, and just a couple months ago there was a really really big news story about um, people who got like caught smuggling ants, like shipping them out of Africa to sell in the hobby. And people are like, oh, it's just bugs. They're able to reproduce faster, or whatever. It's like, yeah, but still, you're taking like hundreds of queens at one time from a local population. That's just no good in general. So, as with anything, exotic pets, uh, yeah, we don't need any more invasives, but also you can locally source them. And I think that's the easiest way to do it too, because if I was going to find, if I was going to order some sort of weird Southeast Asian ant, uh, it wouldn't have a lot of special requirements. But because I found this thing in my backyard, it's it's easy. How did they decide who's queen, or did you find one? That's a good question, Space Camp. So ants, as a whole, reproduce at the colony level. So there is one queen, and she is the mother to all of the workers in the colony. And when that colony gets big enough, they will reproduce and make more winged ants that will then fly off, mate, and then found new colonies. So the queen is self designated essentially because she is the one who makes all of the workers. Um, Certain times of year, different ant species will be flying. And if you find an ant with wings on it, it's either a queen or an adult male. And the queens usually look like workers, just like way bigger. The males sometimes don't even look like ants, so it's a pretty easy way to kind of tell them apart. Um, but yes, I found her. She was already without wings, so that's usually a good sign. Um, if you find them with wings, there's a chance that they haven't mated yet, but they won't drop their wings until after they've mated. So if you can find a queen ant or just like a really big ant uh, without wings and that have like wing stubs, um, let's we're gonna peek real quick. We're gonna take the lid off. She doesn't quite like this, but if you look off to the left hand side of her body, there are like these little nubs coming off to the side, and those are the remnants of her wings. And here's a little bit better shot of like what her coloring and stuff looks like without that red film. But the reason that we have that red film is because most ants can't, or most insects in general can't see red, so it makes them think that it's dark. So we can see in, but they think it's still dark from above. Right now, they're like, "Whoa, what's happening? Why is it so bright?" So we generally keep the lid on, and we with the red, but you can see a lot more detail here. There's like a larva is like that shiny thing up in the front by that front middle ant. All of those things that look like grains of rice are pupae. So inside of there is the actual cocoon of the ant. And Camponotus, this genus, makes covered pupae. Not all ants will. So that's something interesting about Camponotus is like you can see the pupa developing inside of these little segments. And they'll hatch out of that, but not all ants will have these little like rice grain looking things. Are the ants born with wings, but they're only worthy? No. So Sarah, they're it's a different cast of ants, so they're like born with wings, but as soon as they mate and like settle down and find a place to set up shop, they will purposefully drop their wings. So they only need them to basically set up a new neighborhood. They don't want to settle right next to their original colony because then there's competition for food resources. So they'll fly away, find suitable habitat, and then go, oh, okay, I don't need these anymore, and pop them off. And a lot of the time, they will eat them because the wing bases have a lot of muscles and protein in them. So they'll do that. They will make a couple of workers that are small, that basically self sufficient. And then once those are there, she will have more eggs that those first ants take care of. And then the cycle kind of ramps up from there. So when the colony is reproducing, they will reproduce at that colony level, send out males and females. They will mate with the other males and females of that species and then find new colonies and then get rid of their wings. But all of these worker ants, so like the smaller ones in here that you can see around the queen, they never have ants. Or they never have wings. They're born completely wingless because they're workers. They're not meant to be the ones that go like reproduce. Any species of solitary ant? No. There are ants that have very small colonies where like they will loosely associate and it's like 10 to 12 ants. But there are no solitary ants, which are, totally by themselves. Anyway, yes. So this is, I forget how we got on this, but that's Calypso. The 24-hour live stream thing. Yes. Calypso would be very cool. Saw a vid the other day from monarch butterfly getting a damaged wing repaired by a doctor. No idea that was a thing. Aha. I have thoughts about that, Marie. Um, Completely, in my opinion, I think that was a feel good thing for the people rather than like actually helpful to the butterfly. Um, Having all of that like extra mass of glue on the wing and like the weird attachment points with it, uh, I think it would probably hinder flight. And so even if the butterfly was like, "Oh yeah, it's great, we can release this now," and it flies away, I think it would have a much lower success rate of like avoiding predators than just a regular monarch. Um, in general, the insect lifespan is pretty short. And again, personally, I think there was probably better ways to use that time at that sanctuary. Nothing against it at all. I think it was more of a feel good thing for the person than actually beneficial for the butterfly. Because maybe it did fly away, but then it could become prey a little bit easier. And then Space Camp, yeah. Something else eats it, then the glue's probably not good for their wing veins not connect. Yeah, lots of good points. Again, I don't really think there's anything wrong with it, but I don't think it was like, you know, the the best thing in general. See that sort of things for replacing damaged pieces on pin bugs. Yeah, yeah, Starberry. I um I will never replace legs or wings or antenna or whatever unless I know it's from the same bug. Um, just as like I know how collections get used and I know how these specimens get used. And so if you knock around and like knock the head off of two different beetles that were collected in like super far different places, uh and then you like accidentally swapped the heads, you could get like weird DNA readings out of it and it would just be like a whole thing. Um yeah. Yes, there was Tortilla. I remember that. They asked me about it. They were like, "Yeah, I worked there, and I was just curious about your thoughts." And I told them the same thing. I told them the same thing. You know, I don't think it was bad per se, but I think it was definitely more for the people doing it than for the actual bug. Ooh, got some grody ethanol going on here. Leggy scorpions. Yeah. Well, one scorpion at least. Yes, Starberry. Yes. Pseudo scorpions sometimes. Never thought about scorpions as part of insect knowledge. Um, it's not always posh. So, um, there are a lot of like true entomologists that do not know anything about arachnids. Mistriella, thank you for the follow. Welcome in. Um, that just like don't know anything about them, but because I've kept spiders, I took a spider biology class. I TA'd for a spider biology class. I've kept scorpions. I've got like a general interest in arachnids. I am usually the spider person wherever I go. Um, I actually, I had a paper come out a couple years ago because an ASU professor found a little baby spider eating a little baby snake. Give you a second to think about that. In his garage, and he emailed my professor and was like, "Hey, do you know what this is?" And my advisor was like, "I have no fucking idea what that is, but like Evan might." And I read his email and I said, "Okay, based off of like absolutely zero information that you've given me, I'm going to guess that this is a black widow because black widows have very, very potent venom. So they're able to take down things a little bit bigger than themselves. And they've got stupid strong uh, webs. Well, I go to this guy's house to pick up the spider, and it's not a widow. It is a relative, but it is not actually a widow. The spider itself was like maybe 3 or 4 millimeters, and the snake was like 4 to 5 inches, maybe. Uh, it wasn't purposeful. The snake definitely just got tangled in the web, and the spider went, "Oh, I can feed on this." So based off of that email, I got the spider. I came home. I dissected it. I checked everything, and we published it in Herpetological Review. Basically, it was the first record of this species of spider feeding on a vertebrate. But spiders feeding on vertebrates is not unheard of at all. Like that's actually pretty normal. I wouldn't say normal, but it happens way more often than you would think. But all of that is to say, I am technically a published arachnologist, even though my specialty is in beetles. Um, so a lot of entomologists don't have a lot of expertise in this group, but it's something that I do have a little bit more experience in than most. So um, I was also looking for these because I need to donate them to work. It was Asagina fulva. So it is a widow relative, but not an actual widow. So yeah, it was that species. Um, if you dig hard enough, you can probably find the publication. Um, but it was just a little note, basically being like, "Hey, we saw this thing. That's kind of crazy, right?" Um, but these are cool because even though they look very similar, these are in fact different orders of arachnids. Lily, hello. How are you? Um, so that's at the same level of like this is a fly versus this is a beetle. That is how different these groups are. Um, and there was a question last week on Chat Chats, and I haven't posted the recap yet, which I need to do because Chat Chats is in like 2 days. Um, about the actual like evolutionary phylogeny of arachnids. Let me check my DMs. Rockster sent me a thing. Okay, so pseudoscorpions actually evolved first. Then the regular scorpions did. So these little guys off to the right are pseudoscorpions. Again, it's a different order of arachnids, but it looks more or less like a uh it looks like a scorpion. It just doesn't have the tail. It's kind of messed up. Yeah, you would think like it evolved first, but it evolved first, but we didn't know that. People described scorpions first, and then they went, "Oh, what? These things are crazy." Um, so yeah, tis a bit interesting that these things are uh closely related, but the scorpion that we know and love is afterwards, actually, which is quite funny. Was it just not discovered until later? I think that's probably the case. But also scorpions are I say that as this one is in the same frame. Scorpions are generally a lot bigger and more noticeable this is about as big as pseudoscorpions get, but this scorpion is like 3/4 of an inch long, but they can get up to like 7 inches long. So they're a lot more prevalent. People are more aware of them than pseudoscorpions. So it is quite possible that it was a described first versus described later thing. Um, but it's very likely that the pseudoscorpions were named after the regular scorpions. See you, J7. Have a nice night. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out. We will be here Wednesday. We'll do pre-chat chats, but then next week, no streams here, no streams on Alveus, because of the conference travel. So here Wednesday, but not next week. Good note for everybody, but I'll say it again at the end of stream here, which we're probably getting pretty close. Close to 3 hours. Anyway, scorpions. I saw someone ask, did I see Tortellini's molt? Yes, I did. It was very cute. There's a lot of really, there's a lot of cool stuff with the scorpions that we can get into. First of all, got weird combs underneath. So many hairs, yeah. So these things down here are called pectines, and they are the scorpion equivalent of the antenna. So as they're walking along the ground, they're picking up chemical signals from the substrate that they're walking on. So arachnids don't have antennae. That is like one of the key characteristics of an arachnid, is that there's no antenna. So they all have different ways of sensing the world around them. And these pectines are on all scorpions. And this is one of the ways that you can sex a scorpion, meaning tell male from female, is that in different species, there will be different numbers of teeth on these combs. So that's something interesting to note. I don't think Maya has the pectines on the displays. So that's like a cool thing to look at. Tortilla wants to see butthole, which kind of sus, if you ask me. Can we see it? There it is. We got butthole, chat. Ain't nobody doing it on Twitch like we do, chat. No. Wrong way, get into focus. A little bit more. Okay. Are there any arboreal scorpions? They don't go super high up, but there are bark scorpions that will live like under trees that go vertical. Scorpions that drop their tails poop. Oh, Starberry, I forgot about that. I totally forgot about that. I did look it up, and it does seem like they will die. However, uh, the reason they're able to do that is they can drop their tail. They will die from not being able to poop, but they do have enough uh, life left in them to be able to go mate. And so it just kind of cuts down their timer a little bit. So, yes, I think they definitely do die because they can't poop. But the idea is that they would rather lose that ability and then still be able to go mate than die altogether. Um, this is very difficult to get in focus, but do you guys see like right at the base of the Telson, or right at the base of like the stinger bulb, there is this like right there, right there. So like this area right there. That's the butthole. So yeah, that's a crazy thing. People don't know about that, but the scorpion butt is actually at the very end of the tail, right before the stinger. So their poop has to go all the way up through the tail and then out. And this is also why, obviously, Alveus doesn't do this, but some people that will want to be like keeping scorpions will be like, "Oh, I need to get one that's devenomed," and they're like, "Well, why did my scorpion die so quick?" It's like, well, because if you cut off the stinger, which is like this very end segment here, you're probably going to be cutting the end of the end of the digestive tract, so they'll probably end up dying from not being able to defecate, and that's a bummer. Uh, if you don't want to get stung by a scorpion as a pet, don't keep a scorpion as a pet. Uh, do whip scorpions with super thin tails poop from the end too? No, theirs is at the base. Kind of like shrimp. Yes. Yeah, or that tortilla. Leave them outside. Don't keep them at all. But yes, so scorpion butthole, very end of the tail, kind of crazy. Um, Another thing that I don't think comes across enough in a lot of scorpion related media and things that we're looking at is their mouth parts. Um, so need a better angle. How do I get that particular angle? Clay ball, save me, clay ball. Yes, those are eyes on top. Okay, this should probably be our best view. Um, they have chelicerae, so their mouth parts are like two little claws that each independently can chew things. So if you've ever seen the scorpions eat, and I don't know that Alveus has ever gotten like super close-ups of them feeding, they will basically chew like this. They will alternate up and down kind of grabby bits, like side to side. So this allows them to chew and break off pieces, but also then liquefy it down to get into, uh, the mouth area that's back behind the chelicerae as well. So yeah, scorpion mouth parts, real crazy. Um, Definitely not something that you usually get. And then another thing that's pretty cool and visible right now are the eyes. So do we? I'm gonna pull a Maya. Do we know how many eyes a scorpion has, chat? Anyone else? I want to say 8 because of arachnid, but it's a trap. 6, 1. Okay, well, some guesses are closer than others. 4, 2, 6. Um, 400. Okay, we're missing the target now. Hey Courtney, you better lock in. Focus on whatever you got to lock in for, but you got this. The answer is typically 8. So, Space Camp, you weren't too far off. So, right now we're looking at like the 2 on the top middle of the head, but then up around like right above where the claws attach, there are smaller ones that are more like ocelli, but arachnids have a whole different eye structure than insects do. So it's a little bit different. Um, but if you see those 2 that are directly on top, but then if we poke over just a little bit, right here above that claw attachment, um, there are 3 more. And these are more like the simple eyes. It'd be hard to get them in focus. They're tiny, tiny. Again, if I had a bigger scorpion, this would be a lot easier. But yeah, so right there on the edge, on both sides, there are scorpions over on this side, or the losing it. The scorpions will have 3 more eyes over on both sides of the body, right above the claws. So yeah, Space Camp, yes. I think that's correct. I don't fully know how the eyes further up are different than the ones up on top of the head. Um, and not all scorpions will have 8. They can also go down in number, in pairs at least. Uh, so they can have 8, they can have 6, they can have 4, they can have. I think they can have 4. I think they can have 2, and then I think there are probably some blind scorpions. Uh, so yeah, that's that on that little scorpion guy here, and then we'll just take another quick look at the pseudo scorpions. We have a lot more that we could cover with these for next time. But next time is in quite a while from now. But these guys, I don't even think we'll be able to see. Oh, these ones might be blind. Well, that's something. Yeah, I think these pseudo scorpions don't have eyes. So that would be a waste of our time to find them. Similar to how jumping spiders with their 2 main eyes and the rest aren't as good. Yeah, sort of. Is the only difference the lack of stinger? No. That's like the obvious one. Night Marie, thanks for hanging out. We're probably not going to stay on too much longer. I just saw that Shruti went live, so I'll send you guys over to her in just a minute. Um, But no, there's a lot of really cool stuff with pseudoscorpions in that like they have very very tiny stingers in their claws so that when they actually grab onto stuff, that's how they grab their prey rather than like with the sting tail. And they're set up like totally differently. I think that the legs have different numbers of segments and everything like that. So actually quite a few differences, but yeah, just general appearance wise, if it looks like a scorpion but you cut the butt off or you cut the tail off, it's probably a pseudoscorpion. As I said, these are also going to be a lot smaller. This is a relatively good size pseudoscorpion at like 5 or 6 millimeters. Um, but yeah, this is not a silly question. No silly questions. Do all arachnids have venom? No. So harvestmen do not. Amblypygids, the tailless whip scorpions, don't. Vinegaroons, or the regular whip spiders or whip scorpions, do not. Camel spiders do not. Um, the ones that do are going to be spiders primarily, and pseudoscorpions. I don't know what the deal is with mites. They do obviously have enzymes, and like ticks obviously got a lot of weird stuff going on. Um, but I don't know if it's venom, strictly speaking. That would have to be another question for another time. Can bugs get dizzy? I don't know. I'm not sure on that one, Roach. I'll have to get back to you. Ugh. Do I get dizzy? Yes. The teacups at Disney World are my worst enemy. Um, I'm fine with roller coasters, but specifically spinny rides, not for me. Not for me. Can bugs throw up? Sort of. Um, Honeybees and ants definitely do because that's how they get nectar and food like back to the colony, and they can regurgitate in that trophallaxis system. And you also have flies that will sometimes do that little bit of spit up to do like extra oral digestion, meaning that digestion starts outside the body. I don't know about beetles. Yeah, Starberry, sort of. That's the extra oral digestion, meaning that the digestion starts outside of the body or outside of the mouth at least. Um, I don't know about other groups, but yeah, some can. And if they get dizzy and then they throw up, I don't know how that works either. I think it's probably a purposeful thing with insects rather than mom I threw up because I got dizzy. But truthfully, don't know. But now I have some time to actually go check that out for you and report back in the bug cord. We've been going for a while. We got to most of the things that I wanted to. I definitely got all the firefly larvae out. So, fireflies and firefly larvae out. So that's good. We're prepped that way for the conferences. You saw the ants. We did not look at the amber, but we are going to take that back to work and maybe do that again some other time. But we're going to wrap up there, and I'm going to send y'all over to Shruti. If you haven't yet, please join the Discord. I will post answers to questions in there. And you can also select your role if you would like to get notified when this stream goes live. What beetles are we doing on Wednesday? We're after the Latrodiodes. I think we're in tenebrianoids, so like darkling beetles and relatives. I think that's about where we're at. But yeah, Wednesday I will be back here from like 6 to 8 p.m. or 6:30 to 8:30 ish before regular chats. So I will see y'all back here on Wednesday. Thanks for hanging out as always. You guys are the best. I quite enjoy spending the time with you, and I'm glad you guys enjoy spending the time here learning about bugs. I'm going to send y'all over to Shruti. Um, you can talk about the leak now that you are aware of it. Uh, I'll be seeing more of them next week. So, see y'all later. Thanks for hanging out. I will talk to you on Wednesday. Bye. 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. Go, go, go.